Hey guys, welcome to HipHughes History. We're so glad that you can make it because I'm about to serve up some Andrew Johnson on a platter of impeachment. That's right guys, only 2 United States presidents have ever been impeached, and considering I already did the Clinton impeachment, I figure why not make a series of it all. This is the perfect lecture if you're in high school, but certainly middle school, college, old person's home, cray-cray, we don't care why you're here. We're glad that you made it. So here we go guys, let's see if we can throw you a strike. Hey, Abraham Lincoln, what y'all thinking? Abraham Lincoln's a Republican, Andrew Johnson's a Democrat, so you should begin with that fact, the idea that Andrew Johnson is no best friend of the Republican Party, but what he does represent to Abraham Lincoln in the election of 1864 is the idea that Abraham Lincoln is fighting the Civil War to save the Union. So maybe as a gesture to moderates or a gesture to pro-Union Southerners, he chooses a Democrat, someone from another political party, Andrew Johnson, who was a senator from Tennessee, to be on the ticket with him, right? And it seemed like a great idea at the time. And whether or not that helped him win the election of 1864 is another man's question. But right now, I do know that Abraham Lincoln's about to go down. And of course, I'm talking about the assassination by John Wilkes Booth. And suddenly, here's Andrew Johnson, a Southern Democrat, in charge of the government. Alright, so even before we could take a look at Andrew Johnson being a Southern Democrat and his problems with Congress, we should point out that Abraham Lincoln, a Republican, had problems in his own political party. And of course, if you've seen the Steven Spielberg movie Lincoln, this shows this off great when they're trying to pass the 13th Amendment during the Civil War, and you see the more moderate Republicans, the Republicans that are more interested, maybe a little bit more interested in economics than saving the Union rather than freeing the slaves, is brought to light with their differences with the radical Republicans, namely under Thaddeus Stevens. And if you want to read about a really cool cat, read about Thaddeus Stevens. So Abraham Lincoln is already having a problem with these guys as he seeks a Reconstruction that would be a little bit more lenient than the radicals would want. Let's put it that way. Lincoln is looking at re-entering the southern states with like a 10% loyalty oath. He's really looking at not really protecting the freedmen's rights the way that the radical Republicans would like. And certainly there's other differences going on there, but nevertheless, bam! Now that Abraham Lincoln has passed, you have Andrew Johnson. And originally it was thought that here's a guy that we can work with. But really quickly they find out it's not somebody they can work with. Andrew Johnson begins to veto civil rights legislation. He begins to object to the congressional radical Republicans' idea of really controlling the Southern governments through military occupation. And certainly he's not going to be for the 14th Amendment. So here we go. We got some rough hands on deck. We're about to have a fight of brewing. Alright, so Edwin Stanton, that's the guy's name you're going to have to remember. How many names am I going to make you remember? Only a few. But this is the Secretary of War, Stanton, for Abraham Lincoln, and he's an academic. He's much more of a managerial type of military leader as a Secretary of War than somebody who's really wearing a uniform, let's put it that way. And he certainly believes in the anti-slavery ideas, and he certainly believes that this war was fought and it needs never to have to be fought again. So he's looking at a radical Reconstruction approach to occupation, a big role for the Secretary of War in Reconstruction days, right? He sees the right to vote in the future of the freedmen, and certainly this is not something that Andrew Johnson believes in. So, first of all, Andrew Johnson is already going through his own kind of trials and tribulations as a Republican. In 1866, he goes on something called the Swing Around the Circle, like a big presidential push, kind of a tour that goes from Washington into like New York and Buffalo, Cleveland, kind of a, that circle idea. And it's really the first time that a sitting president's going out and campaigning. And I think that turned a lot of people off, them kind of complaining and saying that this was beneath the dignity of the President of the United States. And even though the circle, which is meant really for the midterm elections are always really important, he's looking to get moderate Republican and Democratic voices, Northern Democrats, in the government to support his moderate Reconstruction ideas. But the circle backfires, and after a couple digs that went okay, I think it was in Cleveland where I've read that radical Republicans had planted people in the audience, and one of the more famous reported stories was that somebody kind of yelled out, "Hang him, hang Jeff Davis!" the former Confederate presidency. That would be a radical Republican position, right? Punch him where it hurts, hang the former leader. And I think that Johnson replied, why don't you hang Thaddeus Stevens? Didn't go over so well. Why don't we hang a radical Republican? Eeks. There was some claims of not being sober, and there was a disaster, I believe. I want to say Cleveland, but I'm not exactly positive. No, Pennsylvania, Johnstown, where I believe like 200 people fell off a platform before the train got there into a ditch, and the train kept going. The reports aren't well. So Johnson is really having a problem in his popularity, and in the midterm elections that backfire results in radical Republicans taking over Congress in the Senate and in the House. So here he is having to work with these guys, and he's got a plan, and the plan involves firing that Stanton. We're going to get rid of him. And here we have Congress knowing he gonna get rid of him. So with that idea in mind, and this is really, I think, the theme or the thesis of this impeachment, it's a political impeachment. It's not because the president so much violated the law, high crimes and misdemeanors, but the congressional legislative branch disagrees with the views that the executive branch has on legislation and constitutionality. So the Senate and the House approve a bill. It's called the Tenure of Office Act. You want vocab? There's your vocab for you kiddies. The Tenure of Office Act basically said to the president that you're not allowed to fire a cabinet member without seeking Senate approval. It's like a post-Senate consent. So basically the Tenure of Office Act says that you're not allowed to fire a cabinet member without seeking Senate approval. And Johnson's all like, I don't like this. So he actually first looked for a loophole. He doesn't want a direct confrontation right away. So what he does is he waits for Congress to go on recess in August of, I guess it would be August of '67, and basically suspends Stanton, because I guess that was in the bill. He could suspend the cabinet member, and during that time he appointed General Grant. And when Grant goes to fulfill his, seat, basically there's all this politicalness, and Grant withdraws from that situation. I believe that he even asked General Sherman to fill in and to be the new Secretary of War, but he didn't want the politics of it all anyway. At the end of the day, when Congress comes back, right? Now we have a situation on our hands because Stanton returns, and Stanton goes into his office. He was suspended, and now that suspension is over. In his mind, Congress is in session. He shows up for work. So what does Johnson do at this point? He hires Lorenzo Thomas, another major general in the Army. And this guy goes in and basically says to Stanton, you're fired. Here you go. I'm the new guy. Get out of town. And Stanton refuses to go. First, he wanted to arrest Lorenzo Thomas. And then he realized that if he arrested him, he was setting up a constitutionality argument by getting the law involved. And therefore, you wouldn't have an impeachment trial. You'd have a Supreme Court case about the constitutionality of the Tenure of Office Act. And I'm telling you, the Tenure of Office Act is unconstitutional. Andrew Johnson, in a sense, is in the right here. So at the end of the day, this is awesome. Stanton barricades himself in his cabinet office. I ain't going nowhere. What you gonna do when they come for you? Well, what's gonna happen is, a couple days later, I'm getting dates wrong, guys, but we're in January of '68 by this point. Maybe it's February, but nevertheless, Congress enacts articles of impeachment, 11 articles of impeachment. And I've seen some posts where some people are like, the president's never been impeached. Impeachment doesn't mean removal. Impeachment means we think you did something bad. High crimes and misdemeanors, and we're going to ship you off to the Senate. So he's indicted on 11 articles of impeachment, all of them revolving around the idea that you violated the law being the Tenure of Office Act, which is a political law. Go figure. $35.19, kiddies. You want some numbers? There's some numbers for you. That's the total in the vote when the Senate, at the end of the trial, voted to acquit Andrew Johnson. One vote, baby. One vote. You need 2/3 majority. Hughes ain't a math man, but if you take the 35-19, it ain't 2/3. You need one more. It needed to be 36-18. And interestingly, 7 senators were Republicans that voted against getting rid of what would be the Democratic, in a sense, Andrew Johnson, even though he's got an R next to his name. And there were some charges of patronage and bribery and things along those lines. But nevertheless, it's a really quick trial. It was 2 or 3 weeks. case, in and out, baby. And I think the precedent here, though, is that you don't want to indict a president based on political reasons. Because he doesn't agree with me politically, we're going to get you, sucker. Because then you're setting up a precedent that's going to probably happen every 8 years. So there you go, guys, right? The impeachment of Andrew Johnson. You got some numbers, you got some names, you got some great vocab, and you have the idea that impeachment really should be reserved for something that's high crimes and misdemeanors, something that's not political, but something where the president truly breaks a law that rises to the idea that we should remove them from office. There we go, we're done. That was painless. That didn't hurt too much, did it? Make sure you get the very basics down, right? You get the names, you get the vocab, you get the numbers, and you'll be good to go. Check out other lectures, check out the description below where we have tons of EDU peeps down there that are serving out the learning through the YouTubes. If you subscribe, tell them HipHughes sent you. Click right now behind me, this giant squirrel, and you can subscribe to me and have a chance at winning a pony. How great is that? Where attention goes, energy flows, guys. Seriously, we hope you're learning. We'll see you next time.